2024 is up to a close, and like we always do, it's time for the annual smartphone roundup video. Today, we're going to have a rundown of the best flagship phones released in 2024. So what up guys, Miguel here from Yugatech, and without further ado, let's get into it. Kicking off this list is OPPO's first flagship offering in a while for the Philippines, the OPPO Find X8, which is available globally. While it is quite of a bummer that we don't have the Pro variant officially available locally, this one still packs some really good features. The Find X8 is equipped with MediaTek's latest and greatest, the Dimensity 9400 chipset, and it managed to get over 2 million points in our Antutu testing. It's got a pretty powerful triple camera setup, all boasting 50 megapixel sensors. That's for the primary shooter, the ultra-wide, and most importantly, the periscopic telephoto lens. Flip to the front and the OPPO Find X8 sports a 6.59-inch Full HD Plus AMOLED display running at 120Hz, up to 4500 nits of HDR peak brightness, and is protected by Corning Gorilla Glass 7i. One minor setback is that its display is not using an LTPO panel, which was reserved for the Pro model, but it counters with a big battery size. Thanks to the technology behind the silicon carbon battery, OPPO was able to pack in a 5630 mAh battery inside the Find X8 despite it measuring a mere 7.85 millimeters thin. As for charging, the phone gets 80 watts of wired and 50 watts of wireless charging. Completing the flagship experience is the IP69 rating that provides protection against dust and water submersion. The OPPO Find X8 sets you back 54,999 pesos. Next up, we have the Honor Magic 6 Pro that once topped the DxOMark rankings for the best smartphone cameras in 2024. In fact, the phone even managed to surpass iPhone's latest flagship by a mere point in said rankings. Going through its specs, the Magic 6 Pro boasts the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3, a 4nm chipset from Qualcomm. I know there are already Snapdragon 8 Elite chips out there, but most of the phones powered by that chip have yet to come into our Philippine shores. In our testing, the Magic 6 Pro surpassed over 1.6 million points in Antutu. Flip it over, it sports a 6.8-inch Full HD Plus LTPO OLED display with a 120Hz refresh rate, 5000 nits of HDR peak brightness, and it's protected by Honor's so-called nano crystal shield. Of course, that pill-shaped notch can't be ignored, housing a 50 megapixel selfie shooter and a time-of-flight 3D depth sensor for a more secure face unlocking experience. As for the rear cameras, you get that triple sensor setup led by a 50 megapixel main shooter, another 50 megapixel for the ultra-wide, and a whopping 180 megapixel sensor for the periscopic telephoto unit. As for battery, it packs a 5600 mAh silicon carbon battery paired with 80 watts of wired and 66 watts of wireless charging. Lastly, it gets an IP68 rating for dust and water resistance. The Honor Magic 6 Pro is priced at 59,999 pesos and offers a large 512 gigabytes of internal storage. This next one is confirmed for a Philippine launch later in December 2024, and as we have seen from its international release, the Vivo X200 Pro indeed deserves a spot on this list. Vivo's comeback in the flagship segment has been a long time coming in the Philippines. The last Vivo X series that they released locally was the X80, and the Vivo X200 Pro is quite the jump from that. The phone boasts a MediaTek Dimensity 9400, the same chipset powering the OPPO Find X8 from earlier. Display-wise, it features a 6.78-inch LTPO AMOLED panel with a smooth 120Hz refresh rate, up to 4500 nits of peak brightness, and has an armor glass on top. In collaboration with Zeiss, it gets a triple rear camera with a 50 megapixel primary sensor, another 50 megapixel ultra-wide, and a bonkers 200 megapixel periscopic telephoto sensor. Battery is another sick feature from the Vivo X200 Pro, packing a humongous 6,000 mAh silicon carbon unit. Not to mention, it just measures 8.5 millimeters thin, and for charging, it supports 90 watts wired and 30 watts of wireless charging. Big thumbs up. The phone even gets an IP69 rating for protection against dust and water submersion, as it should. The Vivo X200 Pro's pricing info is kept under wraps for now, or at the time we are recording this video, but for reference, The Vivo X80 Pro had retailed for 59,999 pesos, so we could expect it to be around that range. Moving on to probably one, if not the most affordable flagship today, the Xiaomi 14. Starting at just 45,999 pesos, it offers pretty much all the flagship features anyone would ever need. The Xiaomi 14 boasts the Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Gen 3, and it managed to get almost 2 million points in our AnTuTu testing. Flip it over and you're greeted by a 6.36-inch 1.5K LTPO OLED display, making it relatively more compact than the majority on this list, which I do like. Of course, the screen runs at a 120Hz refresh rate, gets an HDR peak brightness of 3000 nits, and Gorilla Glass Victus protection on top. Its triple rear cameras, as you'd expect, are designed in collaboration with Leica. All 50-megapixel sensors for the primary, telephoto, and ultra-wide lenses. The battery is a bit lower than usual, rated at 4,610 mAh, but with support for 90 watts wired and 50 watts of wireless charging. Of course, there is an IP68 rating here for dust and water resistance. The Xiaomi 14, again, starts at 45,999 pesos. Of course, we shouldn't forget the default, starting with Apple's iPhone 16 Pro. No, not the Pro Max version, and there are two main reasons behind that decision: size and price. While the phone's size is adjusted from 6.1 inches to 6.3 inches, in terms of display, it still is relatively compact and not as bulky as its Pro Max counterpart. And having a Pro device at a slightly lower price makes it really more enticing than the rest of the iPhone 16 lineup. Besides, the base iPhone models don't even come with 120Hz panels, so going back to its specs, the iPhone 16 Pro runs on the brand's A18 Pro chipset built on a 3nm process, in which Apple was the first one to do so, by the way. For AnTuTu charts, the iPhone 16 Pro scored over 1.6 million points. As for the display, it sports a 6.3-inch LTPO Super Retina XDR OLED display running at a 120Hz refresh rate, can reach a peak brightness of 2000 nits, and comes with ceramic shield glass protection on top. From the rear protrudes a triple camera setup headlined by a 48-megapixel main shooter, a 12-megapixel periscopic telephoto, and another 48-megapixel sensor for the ultra-wide. Apple doesn't really disclose the battery capabilities for its iPhones, but the 16 Pro gets a 3,582 mAh unit with support for 25 watts of wired and 15 watts of Qi wireless charging. The iPhone 16 Pro retails for 70,990 pesos in the Philippines. Last but definitely not the least is the Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra, which remains one of the most sought out Android smartphones today. And that's mainly because of what's powering the Galaxy S24 Ultra under the hood. Among all the Galaxy S24 devices, only the Ultra variant gets the Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Gen 3, at least in select markets, and fortunately, the Philippines included. The rest of the models come with Exynos 2400 chipsets, which is not bad by the numbers, but we do think Snapdragon is still better. Not to mention, this version is even overclocked with significant gains across its CPU scores. Its prime core, for example, is upgraded to 3.39 GHz clock speeds from the 3.3 GHz base clock speed with the regular version. In our AnTuTu testing, the Galaxy S24 Ultra scored over 1.7 million points. Then its display is as stunning as ever, with the 6.8-inch Quad HD Plus LTPO AMOLED 2X display that gets 120Hz refresh rate and 2400 nits of peak brightness, as well as Corning Gorilla Glass armor on top. At the rear, it comes with 4 cameras, a 200-megapixel main sensor, a 10-megapixel telephoto, a 50-megapixel periscopic telephoto, and a 12-megapixel ultra-wide. Battery is rated at 5,000 mAh, and it gets support for 45 watts of wired charging and 15 watts of Qi wireless charging. It is IP68 certified as well, providing dust and water resistance. The Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra starts at 84,990 pesos locally. And that finally wraps up this list. Did we miss anything? Which do you guys think is the absolute best of the best contenders in this flagship Rumble? What is that? Rumble Royale? Rumble Royale? That's what it was in WWE, right? Anyway, if you guys have your own short list of the best flagship phones released in the Philippines in 2024, share them all in the comment section below. But if you found this video helpful, educational, informative, you know what to do. Be sure to smack that like button, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and hit that bell icon so you get notified of our future uploads. Be sure to visit ecotech.com for the latest tech news and reviews. And once again, this has been Miguel, and I'll see ya in the next one. Bye-bye.